Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff and state of Tennessee. Today's date is Monday morning, August the 10th, 2026. The time, 10:15 a.m. First thing, thank you about paying my sports for you continue to encourage support, continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area. I'll continue to further my education by continuing to pursue my associate degree, studying business administrative, contract, and marketing. At the present time, I took a break from going to school. In the future, I do intend to go back to school and continue to pursue my associate degree, studying business administrative, contract, and marketing, as well as other degrees. Now, what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis. It's in the county sheriff and state of Tennessee. Today's date is Monday morning, August the 10th, 2026. The time, 10:17 a.m. First, I thank my family must work for you. Continue to encourage support, continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area and continue to further my education by studying business administrative, contract, and marketing. At the present time, I took a break from going to school. In the future, I do intend to go back to school and continue to work toward earning my associate degree in business administrative, contract, and marketing, as well as other degrees. First, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for all the blessings and guidance provides us all with. Continue to pray about natural disasters and continue to pray about wars that are being fought and continue to pray. Holy Bible, King James Version, Holy Bible, King James Version. We're going to turn to the Old Testament, to the book of Genesis. We're going to go to the chapter 1, verse number 1. Now, as you read, and read. Well, again, we're in the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse number 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. We're in the Old Testament of the King James Version of the Holy Bible. In the Old Testament, the book of Genesis. Just read chapter 1, verse number 1. All right, so we're going to go to a reference. We're going to go to the New Testament. The book of John, chapter 1. And we're going to read verses 1 and 2. Again, we're in the Holy Bible, the King James Version of the Holy Bible. We just read in the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. And we're being referred to the New Testament, the book of John, chapter 1, verse number 1. We're talking about the Gospel of John. Not the other John, 1, 2, and 3. But we talking about the gospel. According to John chapter 1. We're going to start reading at verse number 1. And it reads, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. So we just read in the New Testament, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to go to the book of Exodus in the Old Testament. Chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. And it reads, and God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and shewing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taking his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, and it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So it just read in the Old Testament from the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. We'll go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4. Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, chapter 4. We're going to read verse 35 and we're going to read verse 39. And it reads, unto thee it was shewn that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else beside him. So I just read in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 35. Now I'm going to read Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 39. And it reads, know therefore this day, and consider in thine heart, that the Lord, he is God in heaven above, and upon the earth beneath, there is none else. So just read from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 39. Now we have a reference going to the book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse number 11. All right, we in the book of Joshua, chapter 2. We're going to read verse number 11. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. So we just read from the book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse number 11. Now, Okay, we're going to go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6. And we're going to read verse number 4. Okay. We're in the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse number 4, and it reads, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, Lord. So we just read in the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, and we read verse number 4. Now we have a reference that we're going to go to. We're going to go to the New Testament, to 1 Corinthians, chapter 8, and we're going to read verse number 4, and we're going to read verse number 6. We're in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 8, and we're going to start at verse number 4. As concerning, therefore, the eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. Now we're going to read verse number 6. But to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him. And so we just read from the New Testament, 1 Corinthians. We read verse number 4 first. Then we read verse number 6. Now we're going to go back to the Old Testament, to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verses 39 through 43. Okay. And it reads, See now that I, even I, am he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. For I lift up my hand to heaven and say, I live forever. if I wet my glittering sword in my hand, take hold on judgment, I will render vengeance to mine enemies and will reward them that hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh. And that with the blind blood of the slain and of the captives, from the beginning of revenges upon the enemy. Rejoice, O ye nations, with the people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and to his people. So I just read from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32. I read verses 39 through 43. Okay. Like I said, we're gonna come back today where we left off last week. Now, some just quick review. You know, we've been on prehistoric religion. We've been on traditional African religion, African traditional religion, ancient African religion, animism, shamanism, and dualism. We were talking about implicit dualism, explicit dualism, dualism period. So, like I said, we're gonna pick up right where we left off. And right now, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva. So, and we've been continuing to talk about Rabbi Akiva, considered to be one of the most well-respected rabbis in the Jewish community, Jewish faith. Now, when it comes to Rabbi Akiva, And so when it comes to Rabbi Akiva, you know, he was being held because he supposedly took part in the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132 to 136 AD. Okay, now and so and so like I said, finna, now I was reading, so I got my tablet. And so, like I said, I was reading, but according to the it's like 3 different versions of Rabbi Akiva's death. And so, and he was being tortured by the polytheists, not the Romans or a certain group, but a religion for religious, not political, religious reading, because Rabbi Akiva was a Jew, believed in one God, one God. Well, so like I said, my tab on reading, and so like I said, it's 3 different accounts of Rabbi Akiva. But one of the accounts is that, as Akiva was being tortured, tortured. That they had given him, some kind of direction to stop teaching the Torah. And Rabbi Akiva said, hey, he refused that. And then one of the things, his final words was that he recited the Shema prayer, which is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse number 4. O Israel, our Lord is one. one thing they don't say, they don't doubt. Irregardless of what version, they all say the same thing about Rabbi Akiva and his death. Because like I said, it's like 3 different versions. But they don't dispute the fact that Rabbi Akiva was, he was a Jew, he was Jewish, and he was a rabbi. And that he was being held by the Rome, he was in Roman custody, the polytheists. And that in all the versions of his death, they all say the same thing. He recited the Shema prayer. All the versions about Rabbi Akiva is that Rabbi Akiva, he recited the Shema prayer. And then he also, see, this one thing they don't, all the versions of Rabbi Akiva's death also say this, is that before he died, even when he recited the Shema death, the Shema prayer, he said, Echad, one God, one God. All versions of Rabbi Akiva's death, they all say the same thing, that he recited the Shema prayer. He said, Echad, God is one. And then he expired. So like I said, I would read. So I got my tab, I would read. But it's three versions of Rabbi Akiva death. And why is this important? Why do you keep bringing this up? For the same reason. When we read from the Holy Bible, see, we talking about this damn stupid Gnostic mess. One God. When I read them verses, I'm telling you, you don't get away with walking your ass around trying to lie about no damn dualism and walking around talking about some material world evil and all this other ignorant nonsense you talking. You don't get away with that. So I read these verses to tell your dumb ass this. You not right. You wrong. And I'm agreeing with the Jews and the Catholics. I'm agreeing. They were right. First of all, the Jews, they don't want to hear nothing about no damn more than one God. Include that dumb ass mess you talking about that Gnostic foolishness. And then the Catholic Church, they're already back in the first century. This during the same period of time. When Rabbi Akiva was being held and tortured, that was in 132. We talk about AD. We talk about AD. So the church was in existence at the time of Rabbi Akiva. Because that Bar Kokhba revolt was in around 132 through 136. Now they're saying that Rabbi Akiva considered this Bar Kokhba the Messiah. So yeah, like I said, around about 132, 136. So that's the first century, AD, the first century. The Catholic Church was in existence then. See, this was Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch. 5-volume book. And versus heresies. So when Rabbi Akiva passed around the Bar Kokhba vote 132, 136. And so that's around about the right time. Now, when Rabbi Akiva was being, like I said, when he passed away around 132, 136. Now, the Catholic Church was, active, was in operation, was in existence. So when you talk about adversus heresies, 5-volume book against her, you're around 180 AD. So when you try to bring up some ignorant stuff, the Jews and the Catholics were already, just like this Gnostic text that they be trying to use to mislead people with. Like what was it? The Askew Codex, it got found. The Berlin Codex and the Bruce Codex, they were found first. Some Gnostic texts around the 1700s, 1800s, around, something around that time. It had been found. The Nehemiah Library, some more Gnostic stuff. It got found around 1945. It got discovered. 1945. And hell, it don't mean anything. Some so-called theologians writing. Some so-called theologians were writing. Well, since they found that dumb stuff, do you see some theologians today? Do you see some damn theologians today? No. You don't see no damn theologians today. And at the nation, the Bishop of Alexandria, after he destroyed that mess, you don't see nobody talking about they're a theologian. You don't hear nobody talking about they got word from God. Talking about some Gnostic. You don't hear nothing like that. But apparently, the theologians claiming that they was getting word, I guess it was supposedly come from God. Man, hey, if you want somebody to make a damn fool out you, man, you want somebody to make a damn fool out you, because that's what you is, a damn fool. That's what you is, a damn fool. You don't see no damn theologian today. And then you think you're going to walk your ass around talking about some damn Gnostic text. Well, I done already told you. And I'm going to keep telling you. If you come in this direction, you know what to expect. I'm going to kill you. You goddamn right I'm a kid. I'm a kid. Think you don't come bring your ass over here where I'm at? Talking that dumb stuff, you got another thing coming. I'm a kid. I'm dead serious. I'm a damn kid. Talking about the material world evil. They're talking about getting in the bed with a man. Trying to have anal sex with a man. That's what they doing now. All that damn YouPorn and Pornhub. Broadcasting anal sex. Broadcasting anal sex. That's what they doing it for. The Gnostics. That's the reason why they doing it. See, ever since they found them damn Gnostic texts, the Askew Codex, the Berlin Codex, the Bruce Codex, they found them first. See, they've been going around trying to destroy wildlife, trying to destroy nature, trying to destroy the environment. And even with all these advances, they start trying to destroy the North and South Pole. Now they can go out in space. Call themselves trying to destroy. Be destructive. Well, like I always tell you, you so-called Gnostic, you know goddamn well I kill you. Since you talking about the material world supposed to be evil, well goddamn it, what you still doing here? Get your ass away from here. Cause you ain't got no business walking around talking about no nothing, talking about teaching nothing. Get you the F away from here. Kill you. Talking about taking little puppies and kittens, cats and dogs to the animal shelter to be euthanized. Kill your goddamn ass. But like I said, man, Rabbi Akiva, the Jews they don't support. See, that's the reason why I do the things I do. See, people don't bring these things up. So when I talk about Rabbi Akiva, I'm trying to make sure that you don't be having no way talking about no syncretized. Because no, the Jews don't, no. Because you talking about dualism. You talking about dualism. Get specific. Mitigated dualism. No. The Jews, one God. Rabbi Akiva already told you. Rabbi Akiva told you. That's the reason why when you heard me reading them Bible verses, that's what I was telling your ass. No. You don't get away with talking about no material world and talking about no mitigated dualism. I don't give a damn what kind of dualism it is. You ain't no never, no. No. And when it comes to the Catholic Church, they already refuted Gnosticism, and they still refuting Gnosticism today. Today. Not just yesterday. Today. And tomorrow. So don't have, when I make my video, I make sure I don't leave no loophole. I don't leave no loophole. No, you don't get away with that. No, but see, I want to make sure you don't Rabbi Akiva. Because when he talking about one God, you have to remember, who was it? Who was it that had him in prison? It's not necessarily, don't say the Romans, the polytheists. The polytheists. And see, another thing about this whole thing that I want to make sure is about the barbarians. Because see, the barbarians and some of these other groups, they were not polytheists. Now, they might have been Indo-Europeans. Might have been, like the Latins. Some of the Latins, like the Italians, polytheists, the Greeks, polytheists. But all the Indo-Europeans, some of the Indo-Europeans, like the Persians, they had some, now when you talk about being a barbarian, and when you look it up in the dictionary, then you start identifying who, it was some groups of people that they actually referred to as being barbarians. But they were not polytheists. See, the Greeks, the Romans, they were polytheists. Then you had like the barbarians. Some of these, some of them German groups, they were identified like the Vandals and some of these other groups, the Visigoths and some of the groups that the Romans were fighting against. They were not polytheists. They were just some damn lawless individuals. That were a barbarian is considered to be lawless. They didn't have no damn culture, period. They just lived however they wanted to live. They were barbarians. That's their culture, that's their custom. That was their religion. Barbarians. Scythians and all that. But they were not polytheists. See, the Greeks and the Romans, all that mythological faith in all these gods. They had a god for any and everything. See, the polytheists. But make this clear. Don't be confused with certain groups of people. Some groups of people were not polytheists. That's the point I'm making. Like the barbarians. Like some of them, like I said before, some of them Germanic groups. When you go online, you use your Wi-Fi, you pay your utility bill, use your Wi-Fi, go online. Matter of fact, goddammit, barbarians. See, in the period of time when you referred to somebody being a barbarian, it was like you was a foreigner. And if you wasn't a Greek or a Roman, you was a barbarian. And see, when the Romans adapted it, and when they applied the term to tribal non-Romans such as the Huns, Germans, Celts, Iberians, Helvetic Thracians, Illyrians, Sarmatians, and see, when you were talking about ancient Rome, the Romans used the term barbarous for the uncivilized, opposite to Greek or Roman. In fact, became a common term to refer to all foreigners among Romans after the reign of Augustus. As among the Greeks, the Persians, post-Persian, this included the Germanic peoples, Persians, Gauls, Phoenicians, and Carthaginians. That's the reason why, when you talk about the Arabs, the Greek word was borrowed into Arabic as well under the form barbar and used as an exonym by the Arab invaders to refer to the indigenous peoples of North Africa, known in English as Amazi or Berbers, with the latter thereby being a cognate of the word barbarian. Now, when you listen to what people talk about, just like in classical Greco-Roman context, the historical developments, the Greek attitudes toward barbarians developed in parallel with the growth of chattel slavery, especially in Athens. Although the enslavement of Greeks for non-payment of debts continued in most Greek states, Athens banned this practice under Solon in the early 6th century BC. Under Athenian democracy established 508 BC. Slavery came into use on a scale never before seen among the Greeks. Massive concentrations of slaves worked under especially brutal conditions in the silver mines at Laurium in southeastern Attica after the discovery of a major vein of silver bearing ore there in 483 BC, while the phenomena of skilled slave craftsmen producing manufactured goods in small factories and workshops became increasingly common. Furthermore, slave ownership no longer became the preserve of the rich, but the poorest of Athenian households came to have slaves in order to supplement the work of their free members. The slaves of Athens had barbarian origins, were coming especially from lands around the Black Sea, such as Thrace and Taurica, Crimea, while Lydians, Persians, and Carians, Carians came from Asia Minor. So, from a Hellenic stereotype, from classical origins of the Hellenic stereotype of barbarism evolved. Barbarians are like children, unable to speak or reason properly, cowardly, effeminate, luxurious, cruel, unable to control their appetites and desires, politically unable to govern themselves. Writers voiced these stereotypes with much shrillness. Isocrates in the 4th century BC, for example, called for a war of conquest against Persia as a panacea for Greek problems. But in your spare time, you look up the word barbarian. What we want to make clear is when you think that a polytheist, like the Greeks and the Romans, they had this opinion So when you think about the Jews and Catholics and all that, hey, the Jews, hey, the polytheists, they ain't like the barbarians. Whoever they refer to as a barbarian. If you wasn't Greek, you was a foreigner, you was a barbarian. If you weren't a Roman, you was a barbarian. All right, let me get over here. So like I said, dualism. Let's get over here on dualism. Dualism is, now we're reading from we be on Google and everything, and the artificial intelligence overview. Dualism is a philosophical idea that reality or a specific part of it is made of two basic separate parts. Most often refers to mind-body dualism, which states that the non-physical mind and the physical body are two completely different kinds of things. All right. You got substance dualism, the view popularized by Rene Descartes that the mind is an immaterial thinking substance and the body is a physical, space-occupying substance. Now, property dualism, the belief that the brain is a single physical substance, but it has both physical properties like weight and chemistry and non-physical mental properties like subjective feelings. And then you have like cosmic religious dualism. The idea that the universe is splitting into two opposing forces such as good and evil or matter and spirit. All right, let me click over here right quick. Let me see here. So like again, now we over here on Wikipedia. Dualism. Now you can go to, when you're on Wikipedia, you can go to the library. It's in the library. All the information on artificial intelligence overview. We talking about dualism, so it's in the library. Dualism is a family of views. So that means it's not just one view, it's multiple views that propose a fundamental division. Division means divide into two separate principles or kinds. It typically emphasizes a sharp distinction between independent or antagonistic sides, but in a broader sense, it also includes theories in which the two sides are correlated or complementary. Now, pay attention. Dualism contrasts with monism. Monism, put the cursor on monism, attributes oneness or singleness to a concept such as existence. Various kinds of monism can be distinguished. All right, let me click over it right quick. You got priority monism, states that all existing things go back to a source that is distinct from them. Example, in Neoplatonism, everything is derived from the one. In this view, only the one is ontologically fundamental or prior to everything else. You got existence monism, posits that, strictly speaking, there exists only a single thing, the universe, which can only be artificially and arbitrarily divided into many things. You have substance monism, asserts that a variety of existing things can be explained in terms of a single reality or substance. Substance monism posits that only one kind of substance exists, although many things may be made up of this substance. Example, matter or mind. Now you have dual aspect monism, is the view that the mental and the physical are two aspects of or perspectives on the same substance. You have neutral monism, believes the fundamental nature of reality to be neither mental nor physical. In other words, it is neutral. Now you have political monism. It's sometimes used to describe political concepts such as Unitarianism, based on certain principles like ethnicity or identity. So like I said, that's monism. Let me click back on dualism. All right, let me see here. All right. Okay, right. Dualism contrary with monism, all right, which monism rejects any fundamental division and with forms of pluralism. Now, pluralism is a term used in philosophy referring to a worldview of multiplicity, often used in opposition to monism or dualism. The term has different meanings in metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, and logic. In metaphysics, okay. Pluralism is a term used in philosophy referring to a worldview of multiplicity, often used in opposition to monism, the view that all is one, or dualism, the view that all is two. The term has different meanings in metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, and logic. In metaphysics, it is the view that there are in fact many different substances in nature that constitute reality. In ontology, pluralism refers to different ways, kinds, or modes of being. For example, a topic in ontological pluralism is the comparison of the modes of existence of things like humans and cars with things like numbers and some other concepts as they are used in science. In epistemology, pluralism is the position that there is not one consistent means of approaching truth about the world, but rather many. Often this is associated with pragmatism or conceptual, contextual, or cultural relativism. In the philosophy of science, it may refer to the acceptance of coexisting scientific paradigms which, though accurately describing their relevant domains, are nonetheless incommensurable In logic, pluralism is the relatively novel view that there is no one correct logic, or alternatively, that there is more than one correct logic, such as using classical logic in most cases, but using paraconsistent logic to deal with certain paradoxes. All right? So let's click back over. Click back over. All right. Dualist views span many domains and discipline mind, body. Dualism hold that mind and body are fundamentally different. Okay. Dualist views. Mind-body dualism hold that the mind and body are fundamentally different. Okay. It includes substance dualism, which interprets mind and body as distinct substances able to exist independently, and property dualism, which characterizes them as separate kinds of properties of the same substance. Now, a good thing to make clear, I want to make this clear, is a good point. Pay attention to this when you say property. Now, in philosophy now, what's a property? It's important. That's the reason why I put the curse on here. Pay attention. In philosophy and logic, a property is a characteristic of an object. Give an example. Okay, a rock is an object. So give a characteristic of a rock. It's hard. Now, so that's a property. For example, a red object is said to have the property of redness. Okay. The property may be considered a form of object in its own right. Pay attention to what they just said now. For example, okay, they gave an example. Red object. The object itself was red. Now watch what they say about the red though. What they say. A red object is said to have the property of redness. The property may be considered a form of object in its own right. So it's not just the object that's red that they talking about. They talking about the actual red. Is an object. And listen to what they say now. Able to possess other properties. A property, however, differs from individual objects in that it may be instantiated and often in more than one object. Okay, so what is this instantiated? What they saying is this: the instantiation principle, or principle of instantiation, or principle of exemplification. is the concept in metaphysics and logic that there can be no uninstantiated or unexemplified properties. In other words, it is impossible for a property to exist which is not had by some object. Okay. Red had to come from somewhere else. Get straight to the point. They started out talking about a red object. Okay. So they said that the red can be an object of its own. So when you instantiate and all that, what they try to say is that the red can come from some other object itself. Okay. Instantiated. And often in more than one object. That it's not just red in that red object, but it can also be in other objects. It differs from the logical and mathematical concept of class, okay, by not having any concept of extensionality, and from the philosophical concept of class, in that a property is considered to be distinct from the objects which possess it. Understanding how different individual entities or particulars can in some sense have some of the same properties is the basis of the problem of universals. Okay, the problem of universal is an ancient question from metaphysics that has inspired a range of philosophical topics and disputes. Should the properties an object has in common with other objects, such as color and shape, be considered to exist beyond those objects? And if a property exists separately from objects, what is the nature of that existence? And so the problem of universal relates to various inquiries closely related to metaphysics, logic, and epistemology, as far back as Plato and Aristotle, in efforts to define the mental connections humans make when understanding a property such as shape or color to be the same in non-identical objects. Universals. And so I had to put the curse on that. In metaphysics now, universal is what particular things have in common, namely characteristics or qualities. In other words, universals are repeatable or recurrent entities that can be instantiated or exemplified by many particular things. For example, suppose there are two chairs in a room. And each of which is green. These two chairs share the quality of chairness as well as greenness, or the quality of being green. In other words, they share two universals. All right, let me click back over. And what's a quality? In philosophy, a quality is an attribute or a property characteristic of an object. In contemporary philosophy, the idea of qualities, and especially how to distinguish certain kinds of quality from one another, remains controversial. Or relations are ways in which several entities stand to each other. They usually connect distinct entities, but some associate an entity with itself. and so found in two or more entities. As an example, if all cup holders are circular in some way, then circularity may be considered a universal property of cup holders. Similarly, if one has a set of 7 red and 3 blue balls, it would seem that though the set comprises 10 entities, balls, there are only 2 colors, therein each being shared by multiple balls. Many properties can be universal, being human, red, male or female, liquid or solid, big or small. Philosophers agree that human beings can talk and think about universal, but disagree on whether universal exists in reality beyond mere thought and speech. Okay? Alright, let me click back over. Alright, let me see property philosophy. Okay, let me click again. Okay, so we're back on dualism. Okay, now. Okay, we were talking about separate kinds of properties of the same substance. Ethical dualism targets the contrast between good and evil. Now they ain't say good and bad, but it said good and evil. Regarding them as antagonistic forces that govern human conduct and the cosmic order. Platonic dualism divides reality into the intelligible realm of timeless forms and the sensory realm of mutable matter, with similarities to the distinction between abstract and concrete. Objects in the contemporary discourse, epistemological dualism holds that the object of perception is different from the real object, positing an essential gap between experience and reality. Dualist views also include the Chinese doctrine of yin and yang, conceiving reality as an interplay of 2 correlated forces. Theological dualism that distinguishes God from the world, and the nature-culture divide it's talking about like humans and nature and your environment. And that contrasting the innate state of nature and human practices and institutions. Other dualisms are found in value theory, legal theory, physics, and indigenous belief systems. And critics argue that dualism ignores continuities, oversimplifies reality, creates pseudo problems, or introduces evaluative biases. And saying that dualist thought has its roots in antiquity as a key theme of various religious traditions such as Zoroastrianism, Jainism, the Yin Yang school, Samkhya, Gnosticism, and Monarchianism. Abrahamic religions were generally suspicious of dualism, while competing schools of thought along the monism dualism spectrum emerged in medieval India. Mind, body, substance dualism became a central topic in early modern Western philosophy following the works of Rene Descartes. It was largely replaced by materialist monism in the course of the 20th century as the dominant stance toward the mind-body problem. All right, let me scroll down here for a minute. So like they said, like mind-body dualism is the view that the mind and body are fundamentally different. All right, and then you got you got religious dualism. Several dualism and religious thought seek to explain the nature of the world in its relation to the divine. Scholars distinguish various types, including ethical, moral, cosmic, cosmological, or theological dualism. However, the definition of these types vary across authors and may overlap. Ethical or moral dualism is the view that reality is governed by two antagonistic principles, good and evil. They hold that the world develops in the form of a struggle as these two forces battle for influence. And that the two forces are either conceived as impersonal principles or personified as rival deities, embodying moral opposites. The opposing forces are sometimes assigned to different domains, such as heaven and hell. Some religions regard conflict as eternal and unresolvable, while others introduce an eschatological or soteriological dimension, predicting a final triumph of good over evil. Such as, now, ethical dualism plays a central role in Zoroastrianism. And see, that's what I was saying earlier. See, we're talking about ethical dualism. So, and it's talking about, like, for example, several Gnostic systems distinguish between the supreme being and a demiurge who functions as an inferior, misguided creator, introducing malevolence or ignorance. But I gave you book, chapter, and verse. Turn to Genesis chapter 1, they killed all that. Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1, they null and void all that. You can get the hell up out of here. Okay, you got this yin and yang. And see, all this falls upon the religious dualism, like ethical. But then you got others. It's, like not all religious dualism involve principles or forces actively in conflict with each other. Some posit correlated principles that govern the cosmic order by balancing or complementing each other without a hostile struggle. And so a central dualism in ancient Chinese thought focuses on the contrast between yin and yang. And they understood as correlated forces that describe how things arise, interact, and stay in balance. Like yin is the female principle associated with earth, darkness, and passivity. Yang is the male principle associated with heaven, brightness, and activity. And so yin and yang are understood as dual aspects of all things, as dependent forces. Neither is ranked above the other. Instead, the ideal is to cultivate a dynamic harmony between them. And you have Neo-Confucian thought explores another dualism involving two inseparable principles. It distinguishes between Lai, the general pattern or rational order of the cosmos, and Kai, the vital force that actualizes this pattern and animates things. And then you got the contrast between Brahman and Maya is a frequently discussed pluralism in Indian thought. Brahman is the ultimate reality, a state of perfect unity and pure existence without divisive qualities. Maya describes the world of illusory appearances, characterized by characterized by constant change, a multiplicity of entities, and a deceptive sense of separation from the divine unity. Okay. And so, and then you have a form of theological dualism often addressed in monotheistic religions concerning the relationship between God and the world. It asserts that the two are radically different. God creates and governs the world but does not belong to it. For example, classical theism holds that God is the transcendent, eternal creator and sustainer of the world, existing before and independently of its creation. Classical theists typically emphasize the qualitative distinction between God's perfect attributes such as omnipotence, omniscience, and omnibenevolence, in contrast to the imperfections found in the world. This God-world dualism contrasts with monist views that reject a strict distinction. According to pantheism, God and the world are identical, meaning that God is fully immanent in the creation. Pantheism, a related view, maintains that the world is part of God, making God both immanent and transcendent. And then you got this Platonic dualism. Hold that reality is divided into two distinct realms, the intelligible realm of forms and the sensual realm of matter. And so Platonic forms are perfect and immutable ideas such as the forms of beauty, justice, and goodness. They constitute the essence of physical things, but exist independent of them. In their Platonic forms contrast with matter, which is accessible to sensory perception as a changeable substance. Material things imitate the forms to varying degrees but fail to fully embody them. For example, as degrees of justice without reaching perfect justice. Because of this inadequacy, Plato argued that ideal forms cannot be learned from experience, and as the objects of true knowledge have a higher degree of existence. And then you have epistemological dualism, and also known as indirect realism or representationalism, posits a fundamental division between experience and reality. It holds that perception is not in direct contact with the world, asserting that the subjectively experienced object is distinct from the real object. in that epistemological dualists typically maintain that external objects cause ideas or impressions in the mind, which represent those objects but are not identical to them. And for example, sense datum theorists argue that the immediate objects of perception are not material objects but sense data. Sensory qualities such as color, shapes, and sounds, according to epistemological dualism, people have direct knowledge of mental contents but only indirect knowledge of the entities that cause them or represented by them. This view contrasts with epistemological monism or direct realism, which asserts that the experienced object is identical to the real object, making direct knowledge possible. And then you have other forms. You have holomorphism, also called Aristotelian dualism, is the view that every physical entity is composed of two aspects, matter and form. And matter is the underlying stuff that makes up entities with the potential to manifest patterns and persist through changes. Form is the organizing principle of an entity, encompassing not only shape but the intrinsic arrangement that determines the entity's essence. Okay? So like I said, this dualism. Let me click over here. And let me click over here to implicit dualism. Implicit dualism refers to the automatic, unstated tendency for people to think of the mind and body as separate entities, even when they consciously or explicitly claim to be materialists who believe only in physical matter. It reflects a deep-seated, intuitive way humans process personal identity and consciousness. Now, some of the key aspects in intuitive bias: people naturally view the mind as airy or ethereal and the body as solid matter. Language of possession: humans speak of my brain or my body the same way they talk about owning an external object. Persistence: psychological studies use implicit association tests show this dualistic reflex remains active even in individuals who reject explicit philosophical dualism. Explicit dualism is the clear, open philosophical view that the mind and body are two completely different types of things. It states the mind is a non-physical, thinking-based substance, while the body is a physical, space-occupying material. Now you have core ideas of explicit dualism. Two substances, reality splits into mental stuff and physical stuff. Immaterial mind, thoughts, and feelings live outside the two. Thoughts and feelings live outside the laws of physical space. And material body. The brain and organs follow mechanical and physical rules. Now, the main problems and debates in the action. It is hard to explain how a non-physical mind can cause a physical body to move. Science clash. Modern neuroscience links brain states directly to mental actions. Mixed opinions. As discussed on platforms like Philosophy Stack Exchange, some thinkers view dualism as a logical response to the unique field of consciousness, with others argue it relies too much on opinion, too much on unproven non-physical assumptions. Unproven non-physical assumptions. Okay. Now, dualism in cosmology is the belief that two fundamental concepts exist. Two fundamental concepts exist, which often oppose each other. is an umbrella term that covers a diversity of views from varying religions, including both traditional religions and scriptural religion. But that's important. It's the belief that two fundamental concepts exist, and they often oppose each other. Moral dualism is the belief of the great complement of or conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent. Now, do you know the benevolent? The good, charitable, merciful. Who is the malevolent? Because the benevolent one is the one that's love, kindness. The malevolent is the one that's mean, the destroyer, the one who don't give a damn about anything, who hates everything, anybody, That's the malevolent. So it's a conflict. Moral dualism is the belief of the great complement. That's the great complement, the benevolent, or the conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent. It simply implies there are two moral opposites. When you say moral, when we go back to dualism, we talk about good and evil. Falls up under ethical. Moral opposites, they work independent of any interpretation of what might be moral and independent of how these may be represented. Moral opposites, for example, exist in a worldview that has one God. Moral opposites exist in a worldview that has one God, more than one God, or none. By contrast, that's what duotheism, bitheism, and ditheism implies. At least two gods. While bitheism implies harmony, bitheism or ditheism implies at least two gods. While bitheism implies harmony, ditheism implies rivalry and opposition. So that between good and evil, light or dark, or summer or winter. A ditheistic system could be one in which one God is the creator and the other a destroyer. In theology, dualism also refers to the relationship between the deity and creation, or the deity and the universe. That's theistic dualism. And then alternatively, ontological dualism, the word is divided into two overarching categories. Within Chinese culture and philosophy, the opposition and combination the universe of the opposition and combination of the universe, two basic principles are expressed as yin and yang in our traditional foundational doctrine of Taoism and Confucianism and some Chinese Buddhist schools. So let me scroll for a minute. All right. Okay, that's what I want to get back to. Want to get back to what we were talking about, the history. Moral dualism began as a theological belief. Dualism was first seen implicitly in Egyptian religious beliefs by the contrast of the god Set, which was disorder and death, and Osiris, order and life. That's the contrast. One is disorder. You had Set, he was disorder and death. Osiris was order and life. But there's a history of moral dualism. It's a history. And then you come up with the first explicit conception of dualism came from the ancient Persian religion of Zoroastrianism around the 5th century BC. And that Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic religion. They believe that Ahura Mazda is the eternal creator of all good things. Any violation of Ahura Mazda order arises from Druj, which is everything uncreated. From this comes a significant choice for humans to make. Either they fully participate in human life for Ahura Mazda, or they do not and give Jewish power. Personal dualism is even more distinct in the beliefs of later religions. So you have moral dualism began as a theological belief. And that dualism was first seen implicitly in Egyptian religious beliefs. By the contrast of the gods Set, disorder, death, and Osiris, order and life. And then again, the first explicit conception of dualism can be from the ancient Persian religion of Zoroastrianism around the 5th century BC. And so we have to make this clear. Moral dualism. They had some kind of beginning. See, when we say first, this is not to negate the hard, the work that the scientists put in. It's a lot of hard work. Long hours and all that kind of stuff. And so, the archaeologists and the anthropologists And then, other fields of science. So that's important. That's important. From a historical point of view, it's very important. It's very important. Because see, when you start talking about the religion, theistic dualism, talking about God and universe, exactly when it began. Now we talking about moral dualism, but we also have theistic dualism. So when you read the Holy Bible, and talking about God and the creation, Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. Now, what time? Okay. Let me. Now, prehistoric religion is the religious practice of prehistoric cultures. Prehistory, the period before written records, accounts for the bulk of human experience. Over 99% of it occurred during the Paleolithic period alone. Prehistoric cultures spanned the globe and existed for over 2.5 million years. Their religious practices were many and varied, and studying them is difficult due to the lack of written records detailing their faiths. Okay. Okay, let me see. The hominin timeline. let me see here. And so, let me see here. Now, what I'm looking at before I end today's video is we talking about prehistory, and they talking about the Neanderthal, and that when you say Neanderthal, there's another thing they say, like the Cro-Magnon. And it's probably the Neanderthal range span. But the Neanderthal was like this group of people, like around Europe somewhere. And so that but when we talk about that Neanderthal, We have to remember. Let me throw this in there. So that's where the distinction came from. You know, they've been doing all these discoveries, finding all these fossils. So the Neanderthals are an extinct group of archaic humans who inhabited Europe and Western and Central Asia during the middle to late Pleistocene. Neanderthal extinction occurred roughly 40,000 years ago with the immigration of modern humans, the Cro-Magnons. And who were the Cro-Magnons? Were the first early modern humans, Homo sapiens, found in Europe and Siberia, continuously occupying the continent possibly from as early as 56,800 years ago. They interacted and interbred with the indigenous Neanderthals of Europe and Western Asia, who went extinct 35,000 to 40,000 years ago. Ancient DNA research indicates that the earliest modern humans in Europe during the initial Upper Paleolithic 45 to 40 KY were part of the broader early expansion of Homo sapiens from Eurasia. Genetic data show that some early European individuals represent lineages that have left little or no detectable ancestry in later European population. However, other lineages present in Europe by 38 to 37 K are genetically close to later Upper Paleolithic Europeans. These surviving Upper Paleolithic populations contributed ancestry to Mesolithic European hunter-gatherers, including Western hunter-gatherers, who in turn form one of the principal ancestral components of present-day Europeans, rather than reflecting a separate later migration into Europe prior to the Neolithic. Current evidence supports a model of early population structure followed by lineage extinction and survival within the initial Homo sapiens. Expansion from the continent. Cro-Magnons produced Upper Paleolithic cultures. The first major one being the Aurignacian, which was succeeded by the Gravitatian about 30,000 years ago. The Gravitanian split into the Epigravitan in the east and Solutrean in the west due to major climatic degradation during the last glacial maximum. As Europe warmed, the Solutrean evolved into the Magdalenian by 20,000 years ago, and these peoples recolonized Europe. So like I said, when we talking about the Neanderthals, and then they got this other classification, the Cro-Magnon. Now, what they was now, before I end today, I'm gonna touch on this: the recent African origin of modern humans. The recent African origin of modern humans, or the out of Africa theory, holds that present-day humans outside Africa descend mainly from a single expansion of anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, from Africa around 70,000, 50,000 years ago. It is the most widely accepted paleoanthropological model of the geographical origin and early migration of the human species. This expansion follows the earlier expansions of hominins out of Africa, accomplished by Homo erectus and then Homo neanderthalensis. The model proposed a single origin of Homo sapiens in the taxonomic sense, precluding parallel evolution in other regions of traits considered anatomically modern, but not preclude multiple admixtures between Homo sapiens and archaic humans in Europe and Asia. Okay. Okay. But we're going to come back on this. And like I said, traditional African religion. Traditional African religions are indigenous lived spiritual systems shared across different ethnic groups. They feature a supreme creator, God, lesser spirits and deities, and active ancestor veneration passed down by oral tradition. They focus on community harmony, rituals, and respecting nature. That's important. Now, the core beliefs: supreme creator. Most groups recognize one distant or ultimate high god, such as Olodumare for their Yoruba or Inyame for their Kan. Lesser deities in spirit, nature, and local elements are filled with spiritual forces like the Orisha in West Africa. Ancestral veneration. Dead elders act as close guardians and links between humans and the divine. Practices and tradition. Lived action focuses on daily rites, music, dance, festivals, rather than holy texts or history teaching motive. Move through stories, proverbs, customs, and art. No conversion. These paths belong to specific peoples and do not seek out new members. All right. And so we, still talking about animism and shamanism, but we're gonna come back on this dualism, and see, this is the reason why it's so important. See, we got YouTube videos and we got reels and things like this, and so like I said, man, you be seeing all kind of videos, YouTube videos, and talking about God or gods and things, and trying to talk about the Holy Bible, trying to break down the code in the Holy Bible and all this. from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And so, you know, it's all kind of YouTube videos and reels, you know, that's out there, you know, they're out there. And so, people have, have views, and so you can, express your opinion, or whatever, you make you a YouTube video, make you a reel, and respond. You don't have to just give comments, but you can do some research, go take your butt over there to the library and get all your information together, and make you a video, or whatever, make you a reel or something, but this is a good thing that I'm doing it because it's on, in Chicago, they were talking, I seen a reel the other day. They were talking about how Dick Clark, he tried to replace Soul Train. When Soul Train first came out, when Don Canese first started Soul Train, and it first started out like local, local channel, TV channel had a, first when it first came out. But Dick Clark tried to play. It didn't work. Make a long story short, it didn't work. And like that old saying, and the rest is history. Soul Train is still have an influence, and speaking of Chicago, like I said, the Vice Lord, like I said before I end, David. See, that's the reason why I do the things I do. See, dualism. See, when you talking about all this damn, making all this hoopla about this damn Gnostic writing. See, this is what I was saying about that blood gang and that Crip gang. See, I intentionally do the things I do to show you that it was individuals in the past. They ass didn't know what they was talking about. See, just like we sit here talking about dualism, and then you got to break down all this other stuff, just like we had to go over the property and see, them the individuals who didn't know what they were talking about. Them the individuals just like this damn gangster disciple, this Larry who, and they talking about this black gangster new breed, this what's it, Boone Black. As you can see, he didn't know what he was talking about. That dummy didn't know what he was talking about. That dumb ass dude, he did not know what he was talking about. So the Bible Lord ain't got to worry about nothing. Elmer Peplow Perry, a real man, true brother. See, that's the reason why I do the things I do. Conservative Vice Lord Incorporated is coming back. That's the reason why I do what I do. See, you say something out your goddamn mouth, I'm gonna be right here. See, I'm here. I'm on the scene. Goddamn it. Bring it. I'm on the scene. Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. Come on with it. Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. Bring it on. Come on. Come on. Bring it. You ain't got no being talking about no material world being evil. Talking about it's more than one. No. Talking about some damn mitigated dualism. See, this is the reason why I do the things I do. See, when the brothers be in the state penitentiary, that's the reason why I do the things I do. I want to hear you say mitigated dualism. Somebody say something about some Gnostic, and you see conservative Bible or some of them brothers got incarcerated. When you hear somebody say mitigated dualism, that's the reason why I do the things I do. When you hear somebody say the difference between when you say dualism and you talking about the malevolent and the benevolent, and that it's contrast. It's a conflict, dualism. And when you hear it, see, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. And when you talk about dualism, it's division. It's two. It's two separate principles or kinds. Now it's the dualism. Dualism contrasts monism. That's what I want to hear. You ain't got to memorize nothing. But as long as I hear dualism, that's what I want to hear. Dualism. Go look it up. Dualism contrast. There's a difference. Dualism, you talking about two. Monism, you talking about one. That's all you had to say. Dualism, you talking about two. Monism, you talking about one. That's all. It's a contrast. That's all you had. Because anything else, you can take your ass to the library and you can get more in detail. Don't they got a library in prison? Okay. In the Illinois State Penitentiary? Okay. That's good enough. Monism is one. Dualism is two. That's good enough. Start right there. Then you start getting a little more specific. Mind-body dualism. And then that monist stuff, you're getting a little more specific. With that monism. Prior to monism, you getting a little, hey, you getting a little more in depth there. And when you talk about pluralism, you talking about something totally different that's in opposition to dualism and monism. When you hear it, pluralism, see, that's what I want to hear. And then, even on that, implicit dualism and explicit dualism. Dualism in cosmology, and even on that, the alternative ontological dualism, like yin and yang. Just like yesterday when I was watching the Kung Fu classic movie, the Shaolin Temple, and martial arts movie, talking about some yin and yang. When on the YouTube channel, on my phone, watching the Kung Fu classic, martial arts and but like I said, that's what I want to hear, man. That's serious. That's what I want to hear. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. That's exactly what I want to hear. Is that in the Illinois State Penitentiary, them brothers and sisters, they getting the information. They know what you're talking about. They can take what Rabbi Akiva and they can go to the library and get more detailed information. See, when somebody says something about some Gnostic, Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. Go to Joshua chapter 2, verse number 11. Go to the New Testament. Matter of fact, when you go to Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1, go to the New Testament. Go to the book of John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You ain't got to be scared. You ain't got to worry about nobody. Talking about no Gnostic. See, that's what I'm giving you these verses. That's all you got to do. Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1. Go to the New Testament. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. You ain't got to worry about it. You ain't got to worry about it. There ain't nothing to worry about. You ain't got to worry about no mitigated dualism. You ain't got to worry about it. Talking about some Gnostic text. You ain't got to worry about it. I just gave you the verse. Including over there in Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 35, verse 39. Deuteronomy chapter 6, the Shema Yisrael prayer, verse number 4. O Israel, your God is one God. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 35 through 39. Let me refer to my notes here. I know it's 32. Yeah, 39 through 43. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verses 39 through 43. One God. One God. So you ain't got to see them verses there. Somebody say something to you about some Gnostic. I just gave you the verse. You ain't gotta bag down. You ain't gotta bow down. I just gave you the verse. You stand on God's word. Stand on God's word. You ain't gotta worry about no Gnostic. Stand on God's word. One God. One. One God. One. You ain't gonna bow down, you ain't bag down, ain't running from no damn Gnostic. Ain't nobody running. Gonna run into you. Coming to you. Yeah, don't take 10 toes down. One God. 10 toes down. One God. One. Ain't nobody running. Ain't nobody bagging down. You ain't talking about nothing. You ain't nobody. Tell you. You ain't nobody. Doggone right. But see, we're gonna stay on this. See, like I say, we're gonna stay on this. This is indefinite here, man. This is indefinite. Because see, first of all, it's too much information. You can't absorb all this, and then we like to have discussion too. We like to, talk back and forth, get interaction and all that. But and we like to get pumped up and get incited and get out your chair and get to stand up and somebody say something. No, I'm about ready to stand up right now. I say what? I'm getting hyped up now. Shoot. But let me see what we got. We're gonna 7 more minutes and be 3 hours, so But we're gonna stay on this. We're gonna come back with my next video, you know what I'm saying? And we're gonna pick up right back where we dualism. And don't forget Rabbi Akiva. See, Rabbi Akiva was a Jew. And during that period of time around the 1st century, around 132, AD 136 AD, this Bar Kaba revolt and uprising. But the Catholic Church was already in existence. The Catholic Church was in existence in the first century. And so it's just like Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, and Saint the Bishop of Antioch. Saint Ignatius. It came back to him. Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch. When Saint Irenaeus talk about this at verse I read, somebody had to transcribe, had to write it down, actually. And so Saint Ignatius, from what I understand, is the one who was doing the writing. Wrote it down. 5-volume book. Wrote it. He was the one who actually wrote down word for word what Saint Irenaeus was saying in the book and verses Heresies, titled refutation of against heresies. And it was done during the first century. It was during the first century. And so the Catholic Church stands against, because that Gnostic stuff is nothing but a heresy. That's how you know it's a heresy. See, when the Holy Bible tell you it's only one God, and then you sitting up here talking about it's some mitigated dualistic stuff, some two gods, you're a heretic. That's a heretic. That's a heresy. You have to be a complete idiot not to see that's a heresy. If you don't know how to read a dictionary, that's a heresy. That's the reason why they are heretics. When the church fathers seen them, that's what a bunch of heretics talking about. They teaching to be a Gnostic. A bunch of damn heretics, And so we're gonna come back on my next video. We're gonna pick up right where I left off. Dualism in cosmology. Like we were talking about the history of like moral dualism has a history. See, when we talk about archaeology and anthropology and all this, when you go back in history and all this, so that's what that, the first time you hear somebody talking about dualism, and there was some kind of implicit with the Egyptian religious beliefs, with the contrasting gods. One god was disorder and death. And then there was Osiris, order and life. And then you had this first explicit dualism. It's still dualism too. Over there in ancient Persia. Zoroastrianism. Now Zoroastrianism, is a monotheistic religion. And saying something about this Ahura Mazda is the eternal creator of all things. And that if any violation of Ahura Mazda order arise from Druj, which is everything uncreated. But like I said, when you talking about this dualistic stuff, you like bitheism. Bitheism implies harmony. Ditheism implies rivalry, opposition between good and evil, bright and dark. And then you know a bitheistic system, the two deities are not in conflict. One could be male and female, the other one female, you know. Then you got radical and mitigated. And then, of course, you know, you got like theistic dualism. But we're going to come back on all this. We're going to come back. Don't come back on it. See, this is important. See, this is the reason why I do the things I do, because I know the vice lords in Chicago had to deal with this type of nonsense in the past. So I stay on top of this, and I make sure that they have, you know, some help. Have some help. Because Conservative Vice Lord Incorporated is coming back. See, Elvin Pepperlo Perry, real. That's a real man. He's a true brother. See, you weren't gonna never pull no crap like that with me. That's the reason why I do it. That's why I try to tell the brothers, you know, to show them brothers in the penitentiary that Elvin Pepperlo Perry, that's a real man. That's a real man. That's a true brother. A true brother, man. You don't let no motherfucker, you don't let no damn body pull no crap like that. Even with your own parents. Even with your own mother and father. I keep my mom and dad picture with me. They ain't gonna never be forgotten. Because you ain't gonna pull that crap with me. I love my mom and my dad. And when you say something like that, talking about some damn, no. You ain't talking about crap. You lying. You know, I ain't got nothing to be doubtful about. I don't have any doubt about the word of God. I don't have no doubt in my mind. You ain't talking about nothing. Talking about some superior God up here and it's a inferior God down here. And man, get your ass up out of before I get on your ass. I'm telling you what's gonna happen. I'm telling you. I'm a kid. I'm a goddamn kid. But I don't want none of the conservative violence. Never let no gangster disciple. No. You ain't had, no. Like I told, tell them brothers in the pen, man, you see that damn niggas back in the state pen, you kill that damn bitch. You kill his ass. You kill that bitch ass Larry Hoover. You kill him. Don't you take that goddamn shit. Don't you take it. Don't you take nothing off that bitch. You get his ass. Don't you take that goddamn. That's the reason why I leave my video. I keep talking about doing for that very reason. You get that bitch. You get him. Don't you take that goddamn shit. No anybody else. Don't you take no. Them brothers in the prison, they ain't gotta worry about nobody outside that prison. That's the reason why I leave my video here. I'm still talking about dualism. That's what I'm sitting here for. You ain't got to worry about that shit. You ain't got to worry about that. You ain't talking about nothing. Talking about some damn name. I've been paid. Man, we can be talking about the goddamn Dead Sea Scroll. I don't know what the hell we talking about some damn name. You can be talking about Rabbi Akiva. We need to be talking about the Dead Sea Scroll. We need to be talking about the Dead Sea Scroll. One God. Rabbi Akiva. One God. One God. Talk about the Dead Sea Scroll. Ain't nobody worry about no damn Gnostic. Talk about the Dead Sea Scroll. One God. One God. And we're gonna get back on this on this Neanderthal and this Cro-Magnon. Cause this genetic stuff, man. Hey. You know, but I gotta stay on this dualism. Cause I don't want to fight. And then the goddamn Four Corner Hustle in Monroe Bank, goddamn ass. You know, talking about we gonna do this, and man, look, man, get your ass over there with the Almighty Vice Lord Nation and shut the fuck up. Cause it all stems back to the same damn problem. See, it all stems from the same damn problem. The only thing cocaine and heroin did is just exaggerated the problem. But it all stemmed back. Walter Wheat got murdered. It wasn't right. It stemmed from the same damn problem. It goes back to the same damn problem. So dualism in cosmology, dualism. We can talk about monism. We can talk about pluralism. We can talk about properties like a rock. It don't float. You know, it don't float. It don't absorb water. Okay, it's a rock. Okay, goddamn it, it's a rock. I can't say hard no more. Okay, what's one of the properties of the name of property? Give me this property of rock. Well, I don't want to go to color. When it's hot or cold. Water doesn't go in, or the heat, it don't dissolve. So if it get, no matter how hot, no matter how cold, the damn rock's still there. It don't die. You know what I'm saying? It don't die. The trees may fall down or whatever, might blow. But goddamn it, a hurricane come through, the rock's still there. So I don't know, man. But look, I'm finna end today's video. It's 3 hours. So we're gonna come back, and we're gonna be on dualism. We're gonna be on prehistoric religion. Cause I gotta get back on this geological time scale. And gotta get on this coming out of Africa, the Neanderthals, the Cro-Magnon. Gotta get on it. And African traditional religion, traditional African religion, one God, one God, one God, one. And That includes animism, shamanism. So we're coming back. And so I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. Thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God, for all the blessings God provides us all with. And pray for the hurt about natural disasters. And pray about wars that are being fought, and just continue to pray. You know, just pray. And I'm gonna end today's video. And you take care of yourself. Wish each and every one of you the very best. One God.